Yo, what's up guys? You got pokeaim here with a moveset video guide for Pokemon Sword and Shield on how to use Indeedee. Now, Indeedee is interesting because it's both male and female, so in a sense that they're different from each other, right? The male is a lot more offensive, whereas the female is a bit more defensive, and we'll be covering both of them in this video. The first few sets we'll be talking about the male Indeedee, last set we'll be talking about female Indeedee. But being a psychic and normal type, having that immunity to ghost is pretty cool, especially in a metagame where a Pokemon like Aegislash is running around. And obviously, I think the big thing about Indeedee is that it has the hidden ability Psychic Surge. And basically it summons Psychic Terrain, and unfortunately, I don't know if you guys knew, but Psychic Terrain got nerfed this generation. Instead of doing 1.5 times, and also, you know, obviously protecting you from priority if you're grounded, it is 1.3 times now. So it's about the same damage as a Life Orb. It's a 30% increase, which is still cool, still good enough, but obviously it's going to hit a lot weaker than it would have in maybe a previous generation. But the first set we're going to be talking about, speaking of hitting hard, is the Choice Specs Indeedee set. Now, this set takes advantage of its base 95 speed. It's actually pretty fast, especially with having 105 base special attack. So I really like this, like speed ties with Pokemon like Obstagoon. And it has a pretty decent move pool. Psychic, Mystical Fire, and Hyper Voice is basically all you need. Mystical Fire allowing you to deal with those steel types if you're playing in UU, Steelix, as well as Pokemon like Caparaja, whereas if you're playing in the OU tier, this will help you deal with Ferrothorn, Corviknight, Aegislash, specifically Pokemon like that. Where you do have to worry about dealing with the dark types when you're using this Pokemon, and I'll go a little bit more into detail later. But the move you're going to be clicking the most on Choice Specs set on the male Indeedee is going to be Choice Specs Psychic. Boosted by your Specs, boosted by your Psychic Terrain, is really, really nice, and it's just incredibly strong. Hyper Voice is your option, though, if you want to deal with dark types like Hydreigon, and basically Pokemon that it wouldn't, like your Psychic and your Mystical Fire wouldn't normally hit. Like, the cool thing about this Pokemon in Psychic Terrain is that it helps you evade Bisharp's Sucker Punch, so you can hit that thing with a Mystical Fire from a Spec set and knock it out. And then Trick is your last move, just to cripple maybe potential walls. One mon that could be really annoying for this, especially in the UU tier, could be Umbreon. So being able to trick it to Choice Specs, Umbreon wants to be able to switch up moves, right? It wants to be able to Wish Protect, go for Foul Play, Taunt, Yawn, whatever it wants to go for. So being able to switch up moves was its best thing, and not being able to do that now, crippling with that Choice Specs is really cool. But for the most part, you're going to be clicking Psychic with this Pokemon, you're going to be spamming Hyper Voice, and then clicking Mystical Fire when you fight those Steel types. Now the next set we have is the Choice Scarf set, and again, it's trying to use that still pretty decent base 105 special attack, really solid actually, with its 95 speed, and then throwing off Psychics with the Psychic Terrain, giving you that essentially a Life Orb Psychic. Still Mystical Fire, and then Hyper Voice can be slashed between Dazzling Gleam and Hyper Voice itself. Dazzling Gleam has a super effective hit on Pokemon like Obstagoon, but also can knock out Hydreigon if you're using it in the OU tier, which is pretty cool, and also being super effective versus a few other types. But the main thing is it deals with Hydreigon is the big one, whereas Hyper Voice is just, you know, your stab, spammable move. So I think it really depends on your team composition when it comes to that, right? Like, how well does your team deal with dark types? Because that's a big thing when you're using Indeedee. It doesn't have access to Focus Blast, so while it does have coverage for certain dark types, Dazzling Gleam for Hydreigon, Bisharp, Mystical Fire, and I guess Energy Ball technically for Tyranitar, it doesn't have that big oomph of Focus Blast, right? So that's something you're going to want in your teammates to be able to deal with dark types, maybe a dark type switch in specifically. I like Como plus Indeedee. Another cool little option, and I'll go a little bit more into it later, but Hawlucha plus Indeedee is also a really, really nice one. But we'll go into that around the last set as to why. But yeah, Trick as well, just to, again, cripple walls. But main thing with this Pokemon is you're going to spam a fast Psychic. Maybe you'll have Dazzling Gleam if you're using an OU for something, like I said, like Hydreigon. Or you're going to cripple Pokemon like potentially Mandibuzz with Trick, or something like Togekiss, or Galarian Corsola, right? If you're playing the higher tiers, and maybe if you're playing the lower tiers, you want to cripple something like Bronzong or anything around those lines, right? So the next set we have is a Life Orb Trick Room set. Now, honestly, I think that Hatterene does this better. I'll be honest. I think that Hatterene can be a way better Life Orb Trick Room abuser, especially because Hatterene's, you know, the Psychic moves in general, max moves, do summon Psychic Terrain anyway, but that's not always necessary. And again, the cool thing about this thing is that it it can't be beat down by priority because its move already summons the terrain when it comes back in, or when it comes in naturally. So we're using a Trick Room set now. We're using it on the male Indeedee just because it still hits harder than the female Indeedee, even though female Indeedee is slower. But the set is Trick Room, Mystical Fire, Psychic, and the last move either Dazzling Gleam or Hyper Voice while running a Life Orb. So Life Orb obviously boosting by another 30% on your moves as well. So Dazzling Gleam, again, if using an OU, you can use Dazzling Gleam for something like Hydreigon. Otherwise, Hyper Voice is fine. I definitely think that Dazzling Gleam is a little bit better in OU. You have Tyranitar, you have Hydreigon, you have Mandibuzz, and it does a good chunk to them. It knocks out Hydreigon, obviously. And of course, you can hit them with your Dynamax Fairy move as long as Dynamax is allowed in the metagame that you're playing. But other options that are not actually, like other options besides potentially Hyper Voice and Dazzling Gleam could be Energy Ball. But that really does depend on like the rest of the team, right? Like you can run something like Capparaja with this thing, and Capparaja is a Pokemon that it doesn't really care about what your opponent has. Like you can beat down the physical walls, like for example Hippowdon, with Life Orb Psychics in terrain, whereas Capparaja can help you with certain Pokemon that Indeedee doesn't want to actually, you know, be there with, right? It can help with Bisharp if you're playing an OU tier, or it can set up the Steel Rocks as well, or the Steel Spikes, whatever they're called, getting rid of and appreciating the extra support from hazards. Obviously, I'm talking about in Indeedee's case. And a cool thing about Indeedee is that it's also a nice little stop to Gengar. Don't get me wrong, Gigantamax Gengar and Life Orb Gengar are both very, very strong and very scary. But having that immunity to Shadow Ball is huge, especially because Ghost is so spammable as a typing. It's just really, really good. But yeah, the last set we have is we're going to be talking about Indeedee Female. And again, I mentioned Energy Ball in the last set, but I didn't really put it on the screen because I don't think it was necessary to show on the screen. I think this is what you really want. But Female Indeedee is what we're going to be using next. And the reason we're showing off Female Indeedee is because it does have Healing Wish in its arsenal. And that's something that Male Indeedee unfortunately does not have, which I wish it did have, considering Female Indeedee doesn't learn Trick Room for whatever reason. The slower variant doesn't actually end up learning Trick Room. So that really, really sucks. Because the bulkier variant, being able to go for Trick Room and Healing Wish, again, like I said, this is the move this mon gets, would be so much better as a support mon. It'd basically be the Audino replacement. There used to be an Audino set that ran like Wish, Trick Room, Healing Wish to support teams, potentially Cleric as well. So it would be a really good Audino replacement. But the set we're going to be talking about is Terrain Extender, and Terrain Extender makes Terrain go from 5 to 8 turns. So this basically allows you to work well in conjunction with maybe unburdened Pokemon. And unburdened Pokemon, maybe like a Psychic Seed Hawlucha or a Psychic Seed Hitmonlee, potentially, like, it really is up to you, like, what you want to pop on that. You can put the Psychic Seed on anything, but potentially unburdened Mons, Hawlucha comes to mind, Psychic Surge, allowing you to have that Psychic Terrain immediately upon it. And also, I think it's pretty cool that this Pokemon doesn't care about, like, Shadow Ball coming from Aegislash. So you can threaten that thing with a Mystical Fire. I am just running max speed, max HP. I really feel like this set needs to be tailored to what your team specifically needs, right? If your team specifically needs a special wall that provides the Psychic Terrain and the Healing Wish for Hawlucha, which is completely fair, then obviously EV it to that. But I just think that this was the most generic EV spread that would work most of the time. And of course, Indeedee Female having base 70 HP instead of Indeedee Male's, I believe base 65, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, base 60, excuse me. Base 60 HP, and then having a higher defense stat as well, special defense stat, means it could take hits a little bit better. But Healing Wish is there to support your teammates. It means you can play something a little bit recklessly, but switch out as long as they're not dead, and bring it back to life with Healing Wish. As long as they're not dead, you can basically give it a heal from there. Mystical Fire. Special attack drops are always nice, and also just weakening Pokemon like Aegislash and Steel type. Psychic, of course, is your stat. Last move is up to you. I think either Dazzling Gleam or Aromatherapy. You can use it as a cleric for the team without letting it die via Healing Wish, because Healing Wish will make Indeedee faint, obviously, before it being used. Whereas Dazzling Gleam just gives you that little hit versus like Dragon if you want to use it in OU. And I mentioned if you want to use it in OU because obviously if you're using Hawlucha, you have to be playing in the OU tier. Or I guess potentially Battle Spot singles as well. I've actually found like a Specs Indeedee or Scarf Indeedee plus Hawlucha has been something that's been really fun in Battle Spot. Not necessarily the best, because it's not super meta, because Aegislash is running around everywhere. But it's pretty cool to check those extra drills and potentially Dragapults and things like that. So they work really well. I do want to mention one other set, but it's not going to have a move set, but This Pokemon does have access to Calm Mind. I don't think Calm Mind is very good. I think that Hatterene can do it better. I think that, let's say they would trigger, I think Hatterene can do it better just because of Magic Bounce. I think that Alcremie can do it better because of Recover, but it does have access to Calm Mind, so maybe that's something that you can run in draft leagues if that's a format that you choose to play. But as of right now, I think that Specs, Scarf, potentially Life Orb, Trick Room, and then Healing Wish with Terrain Extender is some of the better ways to do it. And of course, if you're running Terrain Extender, you're going to run Burden Mons, potentially, and yeah, in terms of dealing with this, it's not very bulky on the physically defensive side. You just hit it. I'll be honest, you just hit it. Good dark types are really strong versus it too. Mana Buzz is really good if it's lacking Dazzling Gleam. Hydreigon's decent versus it, but be careful because a Specs Hyper Voice is going to absolutely hurt, especially with Dynamax, man, boosting that bulk too. But overall, fun mon. Watch out for them dark types, and yeah. Thank you everybody for watching. Hope you guys all enjoyed. Leave a like if you did. You can check out the Showdown Live that is going up later today as well if you want to. You know, I have a few guides on my channel too if you want to figure out how to team build. I have that guide down below if you want to figure out how to, you know, get your Pokemon level 100 and battle ready and whatnot. You can do that as well. But yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye, my friends.